Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the MatchNet podcast, the only podcast in the world for single, as Benji say, folks. I still don't kind of getting used to that name, but as for single brothers and sisters from the unification community who are here to learn more about the matching and blessing. Today we have a very important guest from in the United States and Argentina. This is a match couple who received the blessing in the last blessing in 2023 this year. And yeah, welcome. And I will let them introduce themselves a little bit. Welcome, Araceli and David.
Hello, thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Just like a brief introduction, Araceli, I'm from Argentina. I'm 25 years old and I'm still in college. And as you said, we just got the blessing this year.
Name is David from Las Vegas, 29. Yeah, same. We received the blessing this year.
That's wonderful. So today they are gonna open up their hearts in this episode and share with us all their conflicts before, throughout, their matching process. And it's gonna be very exciting. So I will leave the space to Araceli to start her part of the story, their amazing story.
Yeah, it was a whole thing that required a lot of effort, a lot of commitment, and a lot of steps that you need to go through, right, to become a matching candidate. And then and then it was just a long wait for a while until 2020, where I had my first communication process, where I got actually to talk with a brother. And I mentioned this because this first communication process was the first foundation to get ready and really prepare myself to the matching process that I eventually went through with David. Yeah, it was hard, but it really made me grow a lot in terms of empathy, in terms of communication and listening skills as well with this person, and opening my mind to a different culture altogether, to a different way of talking. And it was really a very important step in hindsight, right, for my matching process with David.
And from my perspective, I was living, I would say matching and blessing felt like something so far away from me. Even later on the age of 26, 27, I was like, oh, this is probably never going to happen because my mind is messed up, or because I'm not worth, or because, I have self doubts of my low self-esteem. So there's a lot of those things that I knew that I had to begin my journey on. Many things helped to get to that conclusion, that I want to be more intentional with my life and not say react to life as I have for so many years. And after a couple of workshops of maybe many workshops, 24 plus, those were all very helpful to kind of introduce the idea of matching and blessing. And that's kind of all that, the combination of all of that, and then developing a great relationship with my matching advisor that I at the time was not my matching advisor. It was like an older brother from the movement, that I began to see that this could be possible. Matching and blessing was possible.
And Araceli, you were mentioning a lot about things that you learned that help you understand more about the matching process, your previous communication. Can you share one or two key things that you learned from that previous process?
Yeah, the main issue was that I didn't trust my feelings about my gut feeling about whether this process is actually right for me or not, because I thought my gut is fallen nature or something like that, right? My instincts are not right, so why should I follow them? But I realized that actually, because I was so I had this goal, right, of having a good matching process, having a good blessing, having a good family, and I have a very close relationship with God. So I realized, why shouldn't I trust my instincts if I'm so connected with God, if I'm so connected with this ideal that is aligned with God? So then I realized that I needed, not only wanted, but I needed to trust my instincts, because so far they were pretty on point. and yeah, and God speaks to you in many different ways, right? So that was one of the main things that I said myself. I'm going to really be intentional about who I even talk to. And if I have to decide and not to talk to anyone, um just based on the profile, that's okay. And just I allowed myself uh that possibility. And yeah, one other thing that then it's related to what I learned from my matching process was that I wanted to choose the person, right? As I was saying before. And so, but I wanted to choose knowing that God was there, knowing that God was okay with my decision, right? And so something that I had to learn was to trust that God is in the matching process, right? And it's with me, and God wants me to be happy. God wants the best for me, right? And so even though intellectually we know that, I had to have an experience with that in order to feel that, and really have that certainty in my whole, basically in my whole body, uh, to know that God is in this in whatever matching process I am at, because He wants the best for me, right? And eventually it's gonna happen. Eventually I'm gonna go to the blessing. Whomever this person is, maybe it's not David, maybe it's somebody else. It doesn't matter. God is here, right? And I can trust that God wants the best for me. And that was a very important experience that I needed to have, that opened my mind a bit more, and just led me to a more balanced position, let's say. Because yes, I'm going to choose, but then I also need to give the opportunity, right? And just to trust that God is in the matching process.
Wow.
Yeah. So you guys have to tell me the second part of the story.
Yeah. I'm like, where do I okay, my perspective from before to the main battle that I had was developing a relationship that I can trust. And then once I was able to basically ask as many questions as I had in my heart, and kind of like talk those feelings through, and then being able to build this relationship and trust. Then with that trust, I was like, okay, this person has no ulterior motives, or this person is not, manipulating me, or they just genuinely want the best for me. They don't really care if it's this person or the next person. Like, I want the best for you. In my case,
that relationship of trust that you needed to develop, with who that was?
I would say at that moment, I was with my matching advisor, because I was kind of more focused on the blessing. Although I also need to work on my relationship, my family, my parents. That's all crucial and important. That got better as on that topic. Did I answer your question? I don't.
Yeah. So it sounds like you needed the foundation of this, having a relationship with trust with a parent figure, either your parents or your matching supporter, and that became your foundation to be able to trust someone else for the matching process.
Yes. And adding to that, the matching advisor, supporter, knowing the other candidate very well. Not only knowing just me, but also having a long, knowledge base or long relationship with the other family, so that they can actually, say like, oh, you guys are compatible. Like, it's a no-brainer thing. Let's see if you guys can start a conversation to see if you guys are willing to communicate.
Just to clarify, so my matching advisor, it's Sandra Lowen, and his matching advisor is John Lowen. So they are not only they knew each other, right? They also knew me as well, and they knew David as well. So that was a very big thing for us as well, because I think that knowing for us, knowing the fact that, you know, this recommendation comes from a place that from a person that knows me, knows and wants the best for me, and also knows this other person and wants the best for this other person. And that was like a very strong I don't know, vote of confidence, basically, to be open to this person as well, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
So you guys receive the recommendation, you say yes. What happened afterwards, and what kind of conflicts started to arise?
We had that first communication. Like our first call was with our parents, his parents, my parents, and John and Sandra Lowen. So it was a very, it wasn't really that deep of a conversation. It was just like the first sight, right, kind of thing. But after that, we actually started communicating together, right, on virtually, of course. And so we started to have conversations that were really deep, really confrontational in a sense, because they were very they went to the, you know, point of the problems of, like, you know, what are some of the mistakes that you have done, or what is your history in general. And we were trying to be very conscientious about, you know, responding all of the matching handbook questions and first, and then after that we started going deeper into it. And actually at the beginning, I would say, yeah, you can correct me, David, but at the beginning, the first like 21st day communication period, and even afterwards, it was a very smooth, you know, it was flowing. The conversation was very comfortable. We were talking a lot, you know, and in every call it was like a long time, a long conversation. And for me, that first process, that first stage, let's say, of our communication process was very smooth, and it was very like enjoyable even. And we were talking a lot, and we were sharing videos and things that were like, oh, look at this about romance, and look at this about relationships, and we were sharing, you know, Jordan Peterson videos and so many other things, you know. And it was very it was flowing. It was very comfortable. That's how I felt during that first stage. And then the conflicts began when we went to meet in person, actually. But you can correct me, David.
Yeah, no, I could say it was that was the feeling for me too.
Yeah. So going on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, what happened when you guys met in person?
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like everything was great, and then what happened?
Yeah. So one thing that I forgot to mention, that the first thing that I tell David was that I didn't want to be in a matching communication process more than 5 months, because I was already a bit tired about the whole thing, because the previous communication had been like very long. So I said, I think that we should be able to decide, you know, whether this person is right or wrong for me very early on, right? So I won't, you know, be more than 5 months in a communication process, and that is non-negotiable for me. So because of that, then meeting in person was very important for me, right? And I knew that it needed to happen, and it needed to happen as soon as we could, right? And so because the conversation was flowing so well, I thought there's not going to be an issue, right, when we meet in person. And it so happened that it was the end of the year, and he was going to go to Brazil. And I always, you know, when we can, my family and we try to vacation in Brazil, because my mom, yeah, is from Brazil. So I was, when he said that when he mentioned that he was going to Brazil, I thought, oh, we could totally meet, because I'm gonna be in Brazil. We can make the time to meet. It was going, you know, and we were going to meet on Christmas, actually, and also the end of the year we were going to spend together. And I really don't recommend that, because it puts a lot of pressure, right? In, you know, you're meeting this person for the first time, and adding to it, you are inviting this person to a family event, right? And it can be very overwhelming. And I thought about that, and I asked him, "Are you okay with, you know, spending these holidays with my family? And, you know, we also spend the holidays with other families. Are you okay with that?"
And I was like, yeah, of course, no problem.
we met literally on the 24th, and in 24th in Latin America is the big party, right? Because I know Christmas is different in America. So we were people were waiting for us to appear in this like dinner party, right? And we were waiting for David, and once we meet because of some problems with the planes and many other things that happened. He literally arrived at Sao Paulo, and then he came. We met 5 minutes, and we went to the dinner party. So that was terrible.
Oh wow.
And yeah, that was very hard. Eventually for him, and then he can explain. But then, yeah, so our first meeting was literally on that dinner party, and he was not only meeting me, he was meeting my family, and then other church families as well, right? Other blessed families.
Yeah. I could add to that before that, going into the matching process and matching everything was new to me. So I was very cautious. I'm very cautious, and I always second guess myself, and I'm always I have this habit of being indecisive and in some sort of, they're, being careful type of way. And that kicked in when I was like, okay, I'm gonna meet, let's communicate. Like, we never know unless we talk. But you know, we're just meeting, getting to know as brothers and sisters. Nothing is confirmed yet. We're not committed. We're not going to be in a match, so we can have a conversation and see how it goes, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, let's but I just had to be there. Let's go there, and then I'll be there, and we'll see what happens. And then once I got there, I was like, oh shoot, this is looking like a hard commitment. Like this is it. Like if you go through like and meet all her family and relatives, and then say, hey, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, or whatever, and then I'm like, oh shoot, like what am I doing? Like this is very serious. Like, hold on, this is a life decision. I need to rethink all this before I get myself too deep. And so that was all going in my head. And but so that was a big thing I need to get over. So I guess that was the first that hit me hard when I first got there. But
the type of communication that we were having virtually was, very honest, very open. And as I was saying, it felt very comfortable. So I thought, okay, this is going to be easy, right? Because, it should translate easily, but it wasn't translating, easily into the reality of physical and in-person communication. And so he was having all this, inner dialogue, and I wasn't aware of it, like, at all. It really felt, and you could see David, and it felt like he was completely comfortable with how everything was going, right? And so in my mind, I was like, okay, he's okay with it. So we can go with it, and we're okay. And I didn't know what was going on. And that's when the first like conflict started, where we weren't able to talk, right? The same way that we were talking in virtually. And he had wanted to meet my parents, by the way. I thought, I want to meet you, right? I want to know who you are in person, without, any pressures, without my parents, without your parents, just want to know, I just want to meet you, and that wasn't happening because he was avoiding that situation where we could talk. And as he was saying, he thought that if we met together, it was, sign of we are committing, right? And in my mind, no, I'm just getting to know each other. I'm just getting to know you, right? And so we had different ways to think about this whole, thing that was happening, but we weren't communicating. That was the problem. And so I was oblivious to what was going on in my mind, but I knew there was something happening. I didn't know what, and I didn't know why. And I felt this like hard wall, let's say, against, in the middle of us. And I couldn't like reach out to David because I was scared as well, right? I was scared to be the one to say like, hey, what's going on? Can we talk? Because I was I don't know how to put it, but it was just scary. I didn't want to scare him away. I thought that if I said something, it felt like he was gonna, it was gonna scare him. and I didn't want to do that, but at the same time I needed to talk to him, but I was scared because I didn't want to be hurt, right? So I was like freezing. I was frozen. Like I couldn't think of how to, reach out to him and have a honest communication with him. And so all throughout that, we were together for a week, Christmas, and then we went on a trip together with my family and David to for the New Year party with in another city with another family. And all throughout that trip, that was in my mind, like, I want to talk to you, but I can't because you don't let me, and I don't know if I should because it feels like it's going to scare you away. And all throughout, we were trying to play it cool, right? And try to just go through that trip as, without anything happened, just trying to make it through that trip basically. And then we couldn't, it was just like blocked. So it was hard actually for me because I'm very used to being able to talk with my friends, with my family. It's very common for us to really confront each other in a good way, like, what is going on? I feel that there's something wrong. And I didn't feel that I could do that with David, right? So in my mind, I was trying to make him comfortable with my family. I was trying to make things as comfortable for the both of us as we could, even though it was so awkward. To be honest, it was very awkward. My sister had to be in the middle of us so that we could have some social, interaction without it being too heavy, And so we were playing cards. We were, just not talking about the matching at all, about us, like, at all. It was just playing cards, and trying to, do tourism and do anything but talking basically. And so it was very hard to muster the courage basically to say, can we talk, can we actually not avoid this conversation. Yes. And so babe, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I could say that it was a big topic that I wanted to just intentionally avoiding because at that point there was some mind expectations for myself that, oh, if I continue this conversation, that means I'm committed and that this is a done deal, and then I have to decide for myself clearly before I continue a simple conversation, which is nuts. So like it's kind of like delusional of me expecting for me to have the answers to commit based with all the current information, but we didn't even talk through everything. So I had this impossible expectations on myself to know and have these decisions while I was actively avoiding conversation. So it was just a whole mind paradox, like, oh, I need to decide to communicate, but I need to communicate to decide. And then I was like, this my fuses in my mind just exploded. And I was like, okay, let's just go with the flow and see how things turned out, and maybe we turn out, and then maybe we feel that magical spark, and then we'll communicate, which never happened. But it was very intentional that she created that opportunity and then that spark, because I didn't really have anything, I didn't develop that skill, and I didn't really develop or have that ability or habit of communicating intentionally in as deep as you go with your family or friends. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful because that had to come from you, because I didn't really have that developed at the time.
So what happened was that literally the whole trip had been over basically, and we had only talked once, and that time was very awkward. And so he was basically going to go back to America, right? And we hadn't talked, and I was like, what was the point of this trip? And I was so it was very conflicting for me, and I felt really frozen to being honest. I felt like I couldn't say anything, but I needed to say something. So for some God-given sign,
I got COVID.
he couldn't go back to America.
Wow.
Yeah, that was basically God in the middle of it for sure. And God saying, this is not over for you.
Right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so too.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so he had to stay 2 more weeks, right? Which weren't planned. And I was thinking, okay, this is the moment. This is the time where we actually face, whatever conversation we have been avoiding. And this is like the second chance for sure, right? And I just wanted to add and clarify that when we decided to go to Brazil, right, and meet in Brazil, we had both agreed that we were not gonna decide whether to commit or not during that trip. So in my mind, I was never thinking about, oh, I'm gonna commit to this person, right? But he thought because of the whole, the holidays and everything, and my family being there and everything, he thought, oh, if I talk to this person, I'm basically committing, right? So that was the other thing that added, the added layer that made it more complex and in his mind, because for me it was like, oh, we're just gonna be communicating, trying to get to know each other. So anyways, once he can't travel, I said to him, okay, we need to talk. I've been avoiding this conversation for a long time, and we need to do this right now, because by this point, what is the reason we're here together, right? So we had
adding a side note to that, for some reason I decided, oh, since we're in Brazil, let's speak only in Portuguese. And that was not the language that we communicated in the beginning. And I wasn't really able to express all my feelings and ideas, and she wasn't able to express all her feelings and ideas in a specific depth with like vocabulary and words.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we're in Brazil, we need to speak Portuguese. And I spoke Portuguese very well, but not, you don't speak that much Portuguese.
No,
but you can speak Portuguese to get by, but not
Yeah.
like to get into a deep conversation.
Exactly, yeah. So that was also a very, very big conflict there, not conflict, but barrier that we had. Because whenever I talked to him in English, he would just start replying to me in Portuguese. So I felt awkward by keep talking in English. So I was like, okay, I need to talk in Portuguese. And I can't.
I'm sorry. I'm here like, why, David? Why?
Yeah, I'm like, it was just mental. I was like, I'm looking back, I'm like cringing, like I was just in a whole like different mental world. It was just so annoying. I get frustrated at myself all the time. So then I just shut off and was like, okay, this is too much. Let me stop existing for a second.
Yeah, that was terrible. And yeah, we couldn't communicate also, because that was a very big barrier. I was like, I don't know how to put the words in Portuguese, right? So I forced that conversation. I made him go through this conversation in English, of course, because I couldn't do that in Portuguese. And we had it was very good starting. It was the first step, let's say, of getting back to that flow of communication that was so great before. And this first conversation, we were able to go through so many like misunderstandings, misperceptions that we had, and really clarifying like, oh, this is what this meant for me, and no, this is not my intention here, and really it started opening up, to each other, and really clarifying what this trip was for the both of us, right, in our own minds, and it got us back to that virtual type of conversation and feeling where we were brother and sister, that we could communicate very openly. And for me, at least, that's how it felt. I was like, okay, now we can go back to what it was before, and we can and we can start a conversation. And in my mind, I thought, okay, we have 2 more weeks that we can meet and actually, hang out and communicate and get to know each other deeply, because we have more time. But it didn't happen, and that's where the other conflict happened, right there and then, where after that first conversation, he got sick. So I knew that for a while we weren't going to meet, right? But after a week or so, and days were getting by, and 10 days and 12 days, and he was completely ignoring me, literally. Like, even by message he wouldn't like reply. And I was like, at some point I was worried, like, are you alive even? Like, what is going on? Yeah, it was hard. That all that time I was like so mad at him, because I thought we were going to be able to talk and hang out, and he wasn't. And he was like, oh, I need more time because I'm still, like, feeling under the weather. And of course he did feel, sick a couple days, but then he was actively ignoring me. And then I was actively, like, very mad at him. And so I was torn in between going out to his hotel and saying, like, we need to meet right now, and you need to talk to me right now, or just throw the whole thing, the whole process away, and be like, okay, I'm done with this thing, because I can't deal with you ignoring me. And I was mad, but I was also hurt, because in my mind I think I wouldn't do this to anyone. Like, I wouldn't not explain, oh, I need time, or oh, I don't feel like this is the right thing, we should stop, right? In my mind I couldn't do that to anyone. And that feeling of uncertainty was, first of all, I don't deal with uncertainty. It's awful. But for such a long time, and not having any word that David wasn't talking to me, I was hurt. I was like, I didn't know why. I thought, oh, did I do something wrong, right?
Yeah, no, but it was me just circling around and trying to, in this vicious cycle of oh, I need to know, I need to decide, and then I'm like, okay, this is too much, like I can't decide, I don't know. And saying like, oh, maybe we should take a break or something in my mind, because I was like, I can't decide, I don't know, and then just in this constant loop. And by then I was like, we hadn't had that many conversations, and I could initiate it, and she was not not really wanting to push me too much or initiate it, because it might make us uncomfortable. And then it was this back and forth of I initiate or you initiate, or who initiates here. And I didn't really have the capability to do that, because I was thinking like, oh, this is too much for me to decide right now. I need to have some time, right? And then that time went from 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and I was like, oh, I can't decide. And then at the time I was conflicted, because our conversations weren't the same that we had in Zoom. And we're like, oh, you're a different person. Like, I had a misconception of you based on our first conversations. And I was like, no, you're just using a different language. Like, of course she can't, of course we can't speak. We need to speak the best language that we can communicate in. And I was English, and I was like, why? Like, I was just, oh my God. So looking back, there's, of course we're not gonna have the same communications in depth, because we're using different language, right? And then so then that kind of that concept was like, was in hindsight, I'm looking back at it. So but yeah, I was that was and then during that period of time, that's when I had a lot of intentional conversations with a matching supporter, and just trying to talk my feelings through. I was like, I finally told, after so many days, like of just this constant loop, how I actually was feeling. I was like, I'm feeling anxious, I'm being scared, I feel like I'm taking I'm too rushed, I'm rushing too much, and like, this is not what I'm used to. And so I needed to talk all those things through before I even got into a conversation again. So then so that was a really crucial time, because I was overwhelmed as well.
Mm.
And yeah, if it wasn't for you to initiate the conversation, yeah, I wasn't able to do at that point. So I was extremely grateful that you're able to initiate the conversation.
Yeah. And at that point, once he had that conversation with his matching supporter, the fact that I knew John was it was key, right? Because he was able to convey a little bit, right, of what David was going through. And so even though he wasn't talking to me, I wasn't in the dark completely, right, about what was going on. So because of that, I was able to have that empathy and that, and patience, right, to see, okay, he needs to go through this time where he is digesting whatever he's feeling. And I was trying to let him have that time, but then it was getting close to the time where he needed to go back to America, and I wanted to move on to my vacation. And I was getting, I was still feeling hurt because I didn't know what was going on, right? All the way. I just knew what John said to me, and of course he wasn't going to say everything. So John was basically mediating between us and trying to tell me, like, giving some, room. He's, dealing with some stuff, but he wants to communicate with you. And at some point I was like, okay, like, no, yeah, he either communicates or he doesn't. I'm not, if I keep waiting, right, I can't wait all my life, basically. That was my thinking. And David had said to me through John that he was going to communicate, right? And I was still waiting, and it hadn't happened. So at some point I was like tired and I wanted explanations, right? I was like, I felt like I was owed some explanations. And
yeah, you were. You had, of course, yeah.
Yes, and so I talked to him. Like I basically, what had to happen for me was I just needed to think about what I needed and really get my needs, my needs met. And I needed to do it myself, right? Because I couldn't expect him to do it, right? So then I talked to him directly, Facebook Messenger, and I told him, like, I need to make some decisions, and I need to meet you to get these explanations so that I can make decisions, unless you want me to just decide based on what has happened so far, right? Which it would be terrible because I don't know anything. So he said, okay, let's meet. And we met, and then he explained all of this that he was going through. And it was very good for me to hear that. First of all, it wasn't me, it wasn't something that I had done. It was his own, process. And I was like, okay, thanks for your vulnerability and sharing honestly with all of you, all of what you have shared. So, but then, about us, what's going on with us, right? Because that was, for me, it was very clear that was some issues that he needed to go through for himself, his own individual growth. And I was like, is this going to be something that, is going to impact our matching process, and should we just stop right now, or do you want to keep communicating or not? And this is where my first communication process was very key, right? Because I was able to hear what David was saying behind what he was saying, actually, right? To really understand what was going on. And at some point, he said to me, I don't think I'm enough. I think that you're so ready, and I'm not that ready, and I think you deserve better. And in my mind, I said, I've heard this before. And it was just an excuse not to grow, not to, get to the same, level of being ready. And I said, don't sugarcoat it. Don't put it as if you were doing something honest to, not honest, but not something nice to me, and just call it like what it is, and you're just making excuses.
That was insane. That was so cool, because I was like, oh my God, like, she saw through my BS. And I'm like, I was like, no, I was like a little kid. Like, I don't want to grow. I want to stay. I'm comfortable here. I'm like, I don't want to go to unknown territory, and just let me live my life in peace. And then you're like, okay, say that. Don't
Right.
say like, oh, you're too ready. I'm not ready. Like, I don't want, you should, there's better people for you, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And also I told him, like, you're putting me in this pedestal of perfection that I'm not at. I'm not perfect. I may not have the same issues that you have, and I may be more ready in certain aspects, but I'm a human being, right? I'm not perfect. So I told him, you either are making excuses not to, go through this matching process, right? Or just continue with where you are and whatever, but don't put it on me. Don't put it on the fact that I'm too good for you or anything like that. That for me didn't make any sense, and I didn't like that. So I didn't let him get away with that, basically. And after that, I think that was the real time where we were able to go back to what Zoom was and communicating really, openly and being very honest about things. And we decided to keep communicating, but I did say to him, this thing that happened in Brazil where you were ignoring me all this time can't happen ever again. Because I can't deal with this. I need to know that you can talk to me about what's going on, and I'm not gonna live my whole life with this kind of relationship. And so he was good on his word for a long time. and I told him, like, I know that you need to go through a lot of change, a lot of growth individually, and I understand that that's not going to happen overnight. So I understand that we are going to that this is gonna come up more and more, right? And I'm okay with that, as long as you are okay with that, and as long as you communicate with me, right? So that was the first, that whole Brazil thing was the first time where we basically had to start becoming a team in a way, right? Where we needed to support each other, and from there everything was going very smoothly again, right? We were, I was on vacation, I was resting, everything was okay. He came back to America, and just like a month after that, this was like January, at the beginning of January, right? Then at the end of February, then that's when we started to have conflicts again. And it was the same thing, right? It was the same situation at a deeper level, but it was the same thing basically, right? Where he was going through some things, and he wasn't confronting them with himself, but he wasn't also communicating with me, right? So we were going to that same exact situation where he was ignoring me. And I was like so done with that. And I was telling, and I told him, like, okay, if I don't hear, from you at by this point, I'm basically gonna take that as we are, that this communication process is over, right? And that's when having the matching supporters again was very useful. And they were able to communicate with David. And he was he was going through some things, and I told my matching advisor, I think that this is not right, and because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't, angry or making decisions based on being angry or anything like that. And I told her the whole situation, and she said, no, I mean, that's okay. You're completely right. Like, you can definitely put those limits there, which was it was really good to hear that, I wasn't rushing anything, and I needed to know that I had that right to say those things. And she said, let me communicate with David and see whether, what is going on, and let's see before you actually make a decision, right?
And to add on to that, one of the worst advice that I received was like, oh, you should have a couple of matching processes that you need to have. And like, the first one never really goes through because you don't know yourself, or the other person, everything is on, further on. You need to have one or two under your belt, and then you can get through a successful matching process and go through the blessing. And the other one was like, oh, there's a lot more girls in the church and then boys, and then we can have our pick, or you can just cycle through and see which one's the best for you. This is nonsense. This is like so messed up. So then that was a really, really, really something that I had to just work through conversations, through expressing my feelings, and through talking through my feelings. So then adding to your part, I was going through all of that through conditions and through like personal growth to be more marriageable, and then to join with another human being to build a life together. So then that was a very important time for me, and she was gracious enough to have that patience and to have, you went through something similar in your first matching process, and so you're able to grow and see from a bigger perspective. And I didn't really know what was going on, and I was really very grateful for your patience to wait through that, because that had to be done earlier or later.
Yeah. But again, as our matching supporters were mediating, for the second time, I was like, this can't be our life. We can't have, arguments where you ghost me basically, and and our matching advisors are talking on our behalf. So I told him, like, okay, this can't happen ever again. Like, for sure, if this comes to happen ever again, I really can't, commit myself to share my life with you, because I need to know that you can talk through the problems that you're having, and also, I want to be there for you if I can, right? So we went through that period where he was on a condition individually, right? And he shared afterwards what was going on with him, right? And and I told him again, like, okay, this was a you problem, something that a you responsibility kind of thing, and that's totally fine. What was going on? Why is going on with us, right? What? And so by that point, I was like, okay, we are close to the 5 months, so let's just get ready to decide, right? So then I said, let's do a 21-day condition where we are actively, intentionally communicating to decide, right? And so we were talking every day, doing junto que, and then just asking questions about, things that that were there for us to finally decide, right? And so all throughout that month, it was amazing that what we were able to share, and yeah, in that month of condition, I shared some written poems that I had. They were my thoughts, basically, my thoughts and feelings and fears. I was feeling very, and also my hurt, and I was sharing all of that with him.
Yes. That was huge. That like tore all my walls down, and saw that, oh, she's like dead serious about her life, where she wants to go, and she wants to share that life with me, with, if it was not me, with anybody, but she is intentional. So that broke down the walls.
And the reason I did that was because I was thinking, I want him to communicate with me. I want him to share who he is with me. But I realized I was keeping some things for me as well, because I was scared as well to be hurt, to be rejected, or even to share who I was and then be abandoned, right? So that was my main conflict that I needed to go through during that time, that I needed to overcome, that fear of rejection and abandonment. And that was where, my connection with God was very important, because I knew I could trust that even if this process, didn't get through the blessing, I knew that God is there and is waiting, and has his mind set on me getting my, spouse eventually, right? So I knew that even if I shared all of these, very vulnerable, feelings, and even if he said no, right, it didn't matter, because we're still brother and sister, that's okay, and then I can still meet my spouse eventually. So I had to go through that, overcoming these fears, and share with him this, and expose myself, basically. And it was so it was awful, but it was amazing at the same time to be able to do that, and not feel scared, because I knew that I was loved, basically, right? My feeling loved wasn't depending on he accepted me, right? Because I knew I was loved, and I was able to share that with him, and that allowed him to share who he was and his fears and his emotions. And through that, we, after that condition, that period, we were able to intentionally and point blank ask each other, like, do you want to commit to me and share your life with me? And we said yes.
Yeah.
Eventually.
But it was also crucial, and it was also incredible that you brought up the idea just to set a date to decide yes or no, not yes or maybe, because I was doing maybe, and then I was like, you're like, a maybe is a no. So let's just be clear here. So that at the day, if there was any feelings of like maybe or not, that was a no, and we should just accept that and then move on.
Yeah. And something else that happened to me during this thinking about whether we would say yes to each other was that I was thinking about David, and I was thinking about all the things that we had gone through, right? This conflicts, this all of that matching process, that journey that we had gone, and I was thinking, why should I say yes, right? And it was very hard for me to come to the decision of saying yes, actually, because of all those conflicts, right? It was hard for me to see, like, oh yes, I want to be this person, I want to be with this person, right? And the way I was able to get to a yes was taking out all of these conflicts, all of the situations that we had gone through. Behind all of that, I knew that David was an amazing person, right? And that was the first thing that had caught my attention when I talked to him. The fact that he was so open, so honest, and he was willing to change, to improve himself, and he had, we shared the same vision in terms of what we wanted to have as a family, and our blessings, and we were and everything felt very compatible, except when we weren't talking, right? And so it was hard, because I was thinking, okay, why should I say yes? But then at the same time, why should I say no, right? Because I felt like, it felt like it definitely could have been David, right? But I was putting a lot of all of my fears to just maybe to justify, basically, to say no, right? But once I was confronted with the question, and I had to talk with my mom, with my sister, so many times about, okay, but what am I getting from David? That was my question. And what am I getting from David? And my sister was like, what do you mean? He's really a good person. He's kind, he's all of this. And she was saying, but you said yourself that this is David and that you liked him, and why are you doubting now? And that was I realized I was just justifying and my fears, right? And also I was coming about that decision in a very, like, selfish way, right? Because matching and then the blessing, it shouldn't be just about what do I get, right? And by that point, I really loved David by that point as a brother, right? But I really wanted him to be happy and to the best for him. And I was very fond of him. And so I was, but my questioning was, what am I getting, right? And I wasn't seeing everything that David was and everything that I was getting, because I was trying to justify my fears. So I needed to take my ego down, take my fears down, and I was able to realize that David had come through in so many situations. Even though we had our conflicts, we were able to overcome them. And the fact that we were having these type of situations as brother and sister, even though we weren't committed to each other, for me, it was crazy. Like, what person would actually go through this? Most people would say, okay, I'm done with this. Why should I, go through these conflicts with you? Like, who are you to me, right? Because we're just like strangers, basically. So just noticing that was a very important thing. And the fact that, again, David was so open and so willing to share who he was when confronted. But no, he was amazing. And it felt very natural to say yes and not think about, oh, there could be somebody else better, right? Because I think that's something that people go through as well. Like, oh, but what if I say yes to this person and there's someone better there? And then I realized that I was thinking that way, and that's so messed up too. It's like, you know, you could make this work, right, with David. You know that you can make it work because you have gone through so many conflicts already together. Like, why would you want to go through a whole process again with somebody else when you already know this person, and that you can go through all these conflicts together? And yeah, David had basically proved himself so many times, right? And
actually resolve the conflicts, not just like, okay, we can still live together and not resolve these conflicts. You went through them, dig down deep into the core of the problem, and resolve them.
Yeah.
So then once we were able to do that, we felt very secure to continue.
Yeah.
I was dealing through a lot of personal growth things, with sexual integrity to just being integrity in my life in general, and being intentional with my life. So that was my personal side of growth. So I was very indecisive, and then when this day, leading up to this day of decision, I had I made a clear list of attributes that I needed from a spouse, that I wanted in a spouse, and she filled out all those perfectly. And aligning spiritually, mentally, intellectually, and yeah, I was just unsure on the romantic aspect, because we were very careful not to be romantically involved in the beginning, to kind of cloud our judgment of making sure that we see everything, that red flags and all those different steps of the matching handbook. So that was, it just came to a point where I was like, okay, I need to make this crystal clear. Does she fit all these requirements? Yes. Okay, yes. And then that was a clear yes. It's time to decide for myself. And setting that date was very important, because I would want to postpone it and postpone it and postpone it until I was, sure in my ways. But that was never going to happen, because I was always like, what if this, what if that, what if that, what about this, what about that?
Did she fulfill the romantic aspect afterwards?
Oh yes, absolutely. Because yeah, it's just so crazy and unknown, because you never. I was like, oh, I'll probably never like have that romantic aspect or something. That was something that was going in my mind, because that was the thing that was missing. But how could we, if we're not, committed, right? We needed that foundation to then build that, and that's built intentionally with the decision to do that. It doesn't come out of it on a cloud, but like in the movies, you just have that magical lightning spark or something, and then you're in love. That's all fantasy.
Well, that's just basically physical attraction,
Exactly.
mainly, right? And we were looking for something deeper, and then physical attraction was gonna come eventually, and that's something I was sure of. But it definitely felt a bit weird, because we weren't really like in love or anything, right? And it felt a bit robotic. But then it was all intellectual and spiritual, right, at the beginning. But then once we had decided that we were going to commit, that was like the last, let's say, wall that in our hearts, basically, that we had to take down in order to for our emotions to be able to flow for each other. Because as second generation, we are taught, you can't have boyfriend, you can't have girlfriend, you can't engage in whatever, right? And all these things that are before the matching, right? And so we both had locked our hearts very strongly, basically, in order not to do that. So then it was hard to open them back up, and having that decision was the thing that we needed, like the key, right, in order to really have that ability to to do the romantic aspect, let's say, because love was flowing as brother and sister, but then that was able to turn into like spouse and yeah, spouse and spouse eventually, right? It took time, it was gradual, but it was there happening. And out of nowhere, at some point, we were like, oh, I actually do love you. and yeah,
This came yeah, this was after one of her poems. We went on another miscommunication later on as well, and then we were able to share even more deeply, a little bit more on the emotional aspect of like, and then you showed me a very beautiful poem. We don't have it now or anything, but it was it touched my heart in a more profound way, and I was like in a more deeper way, and it started like going into that emotional like pull. Like we had a really good spiritual and intellectual foundation to then be able to go into the next level.
Mhm.
So then that's kind of where it started, and I was like, oh my God, this is possible.
Oh. So it sounds like your conflicts, although were really hard and it could have seen as a red flag, they were a really great opportunity to go deeper. And every time that you went through that conflict, you guys went deeper, right? And of course, like as you, Araceli, you maybe were not the cause of the conflict. Those conflicts were the key points in your matching process, right? So even let's say you have a perfect matching process that you didn't have any conflict, that doesn't mean that it was good, right?
Yes.
So it's just thinking about my life, and sometimes I blame Robert for being the one who creates conflict in our relationship. It's like, but I'm actually grateful for that, right? Like he either like, is it personal or as a couple, even personal conflicts helps as a couple to grow more, right? So yeah, it's a very full story. I have so many more questions and comments, but I know that we're on time. So I want to give you the opportunity to share like your last thoughts and any advice that you have for any person who is single or in the matching process, and you like, or even to yourself a year later before, like what do you wish you knew? Any final thoughts?
I can. Oh, sorry. Go okay. There's this in the front of my head is the building intentional relationships, building intentional friendships coming from yourself. Begin your journey of living intentionally and build intentional friendships and build intentional mentorships. Find a mentor or take that first step of being intentional with your relationships, who you're with, and influences around you. So I think that was huge, and that I wanted to know a little earlier. That I think that would help me a lot earlier.
Yeah, and one thing that I wanted to add, I guess, was just that you make the person right for yourself. You make the matching process work for your vision, right? And so that's what basically I wanted to end with. Like I was saying before, I didn't know how to decide, or I wasn't sure of a yes or a no. I knew through our matching process that I could work everything out with David, right? Because we had that happen before. And so just knowing that felt like this is a no-brainer. This is the right person for me, because we have made right for each other. We had made ourselves right for each other in a way. We were able to learn how to love each other, learn how to be there for each other throughout our matching process, right? So just, if doubts come in your way when you're trying to decide, just think, is this the right person for me? It's not the best question. Sometimes it's like, am I right for this person? Are we right for each other, right? It's not just about me, it's about each other, right? And the relationship.
Wanted to highlight what she said, because my concept was there's a perfect person for you, and that was a misconception that I had. You make the perfect person for yourself through intentional building, brick by brick relationship from a foundation up.
Yeah.
I think that that's such a key point. And I want to maybe add up on that point, that I think the red flags that we need to look at when we're in the matching process and communicating is seeing if the other person is flexible to accommodate with me, right? Are we both willing? Are we both accommodating on the aspects, right? So, but someone, for example, can have a very big trauma in something that you need that person to change or to accommodate. And that might be like, okay, I cannot do this. I'm not ready, right? And that's okay. But when you are going through that conflicts, and that's where conflicts are so important, right? You go through those conflicts and you are like touching each other's wall, as you're saying, and seeing, can we put this somewhere else? Can we fit with each other, right? It's like a puzzle. Can our pieces fit together? Or if they don't fit together, are we willing and capable of changing the shape of these pieces so they actually fit together, right? And yeah, sometimes that kind of happened, right? Like your first process, Araceli, it just didn't fit, and the other person wasn't capable to change their pieces, right? But in your case, with David, you both, although hard and although it took some time and with the struggle, you guys were able to shape your pieces so they can actually fit. So that's amazing. And as well, like as David said in his point, you need to work on yourself. Like in that process of changing the pieces, it's not only about changing the pieces so I can accommodate to this person. It's about like my own personal growth, right? And even before the matching process, throughout the matching process, and the blessing in general. The moment you stop growing yourself, or the moment you get stuck, then the pieces won't fit because they're both dynamic, right? So
that's a very big thing.
I wanted to add one more thing, is that my personal growth process was a lot to do with sexual integrity. And that was something I needed to deal with as an individual to then go and then that came out in the matching process as well, a lot more deeper. And then that was a clear red flag in our matching process, a red flag for me as well. Like I wouldn't want to be have that those habits in a blessed life. And you also made that very clear. That's a red flag. And are you willing to give that habit up and change that habit? And I was like, yes, I am willing. And then that's kind of how we continued our matching process.
I do. You want to say anything?
Maybe just to add to that for context as well, I had before I had also my sexual integrity journey, right, where I was dealing with my unwanted sexual habits, and I was able to deal with them, overcome them, and then I went through that process. So I was able to talk with David about it, and just to give him the room in order for him to overcome them himself, because I think it's a very individual thing that it's very specific to our individual growth, but it can impact everything, right? So just being able to work through that in a way and just be there supporting his process. Sometimes we want to solve everything, right? But not everything it's ours to do, and then sometimes it's just individually, and then having the space to do that, it's important that you create through your matching process, maybe, because that's the best foundation again then for the blessing, right? So yes, just to finalize, like it may feel awkward, it may feel like weird or not really smooth, but then you already worked that out, and then in the blessing that doesn't happen. And there are other conflicts, but you have overcome this before, and then for the blessing you know how to work out conflicts because you have created that dynamic throughout your matching process.
Yes. Adieu.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Araceli. Thank you, David, for
Thank you, Karina.
being here.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Karina.
everyone who listened to until the end. You guys are great. I hope to see you next time in the next episode. And yeah, see you next time.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you.
See you.